Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel, or if it's your first time here, just want to say welcome especially. I'm Sally, and today's video is going to be all about my pro metabolic fitness routine. Now, for just a little bit of context, I am a fitness instructor, have been working in the fitness realm, teaching, instructing for the past 5 years. I've covered a bunch of different formats. I started doing bar initially, and now I still do bar, do a lot of mobility classes, and I also coach at Orange Theory. So I feel like over the years, then combined with just my personal research and my understanding of metabolic health that I have been really diving into over the past several months, I have an appreciation not only for how different types of exercise affect the body, but also specifically for the effects, I would say, of overtraining and especially under recovering, and how those two things often tend to actually work together and ultimately negate or get in the way of the results that people are really looking for. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. If you are new to the pro metabolic space, you don't know what that means, I want to just take a second to kind of go back to the definition of that word, pro metabolic. And I know you're not really supposed to use a word to define itself, but it is so straightforward that I'm going to do pretty much that and just say that pro-metabolic means pro-metabolism, supportive of the metabolism. And so I'm not talking about a specific diet, a specific set of rules. If you hear me say pro-metabolic lifestyle or pro-metabolic diet, just understand that broadly I am speaking of a way of eating, of a lifestyle, of an exercise regimen. Oh my gosh, it's late in the day, so we might be struggling a little bit, but bear with me. Exercise regimen where you are prioritizing your metabolic health. And then the other thing I like to say is just making sure you are working with your body instead of against it. So like I already said, and as you can tell by the title of this video, we're going to be talking about my pro metabolic workout routine. And the first few minutes of this video, I'm going to just be diving into kind of my philosophy behind that and how I have come up with and what works best for me. And then the second part of this video, I'm going to be taking you to the gym with me, doing a little bit of a commentary on what I'm doing for one of my workouts in the week, so you have a good taste of how I structure it, how that looks. And before I forget to say this, if you are interested in more in this vein, if you would like me, once you've watched this video, to give a full workout split or even a video that is for someone very, very new to resistance training, to working out, on how to get started, because I know it can be incredibly overwhelming figuring out how to craft a well-balanced workout strategy, workout plan, then please let me know. I would love to do that, but I don't want to do it if it's not something you'll be interested in. Also, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like what you see here. Hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. That is a huge help to me and supports my channel. With that being said, my workout routine. Okay, so I work out a max number, unless it's like very strange circumstances, I would say of 5 times a week. And I truly mean that is my max. Oftentimes it ends up realistically being 4 times a week, sometimes even 3. But that is all going to depend on how supported my body is, how well I have recovered, and what else I have going on. And that is the number one key I want to discuss when it comes to a pro-metabolic, a supportive workout routine. Is exercise is only going to benefit you if your body is in a state where it can handle the stress. And obviously we want to be active, we want to be moving around really no matter what, at least to some extent, because our bodies are made to do that, and to remain still all the time isn't good for us. We don't feel good when that happens. But in terms of adding the stress of a workout, of a really structured, intense especially workout onto your body, you need to make sure that you're in a state where you can actually handle it. Or what we ultimately end up seeing a lot of the time is that it's really wearing you down instead of building you up. So even if, you're finding that you're actually losing a lot of weight, if that's your goal, you're getting really, thin, heart rate's going down, anything like that, that's not necessarily a good thing if it is making your body less capable of handling stress. And I feel like that's something I could go into, find a rabbit hole. We're gonna set that to the side for now. I think you understand my point. But the biggest thing for me is just making sure that I have eaten enough and that I am taking the time that I need to care for my muscles, care for my body after workouts, getting enough sleep so that I can go into the gym and it really benefit me in the long term, and it not just be something that has to do with my physical appearance, but that it's actually having that positive effect on me internally. And I am planning to do another video either next week or the week after on what I like to call my pro metabolic recovery protocol. That's something I have just put together based on things I have learned from many different people, a lot of different research on how to help optimize on a realistic level, I suppose, your recovery to help with both muscle soreness and the metabolic response. But let's get into logistics. So I've said that I do a max of 5 workouts a day. What that usually looks like for me is 3 sessions of resistance training. Specifically, I'm in the gym doing weightlifting. Now there are many different ways to do resistance training. You don't need to overcomplicate it, and you don't even need to do 3 days a week. You can do 2 days a week. I'd recommend at least 2 days a week, especially weightlifting, to make sure you're getting a comprehensive workout. But there are lots of different ways to do it. And then 2 days of the week, 1 or 2 days of the week, I will say I will go take an Orange Theory class. Love doing that. Great way to get a little bit of higher intensity exercise. And I find that kind of at that frequency and then combined with my weight training work, as long as I'm recovering well, I can really put a lot into each workout and get a lot from it. That could look totally different for you depending on your lifestyle, depending on where you're at. And there are plenty of people who maybe you have kind of taken a metabolic beating for a while, and you're just not prepared for that level or that intensity of exercise. And that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that at all. This is just my case. So I can't take you into Orange Theory with me. If you are interested in what that looks like, by all means, go take a class. Your first one's free. It's a whole bunch of fun, like a big party the whole time. But what I do want to talk about is going to be my routine in the weight room. So resistance training, in whatever form it may be, is the second key, I would say, to finding a pro metabolic workout routine. Reason being, resistance training is doing so much for your hormones and then your metabolism more directly. Let's talk about that kind of direct effect before we get into the more hormone specific aspect of things. But as we increase our muscle mass, each, we'll say, pound of muscle or ounce of muscle compared to the same weight, same quantity of fat, is actually going to burn a lot more calories. So quite literally, as your body puts on more muscle, which resistance training is really central to, you're going to increase the efficiency of your metabolism in a good sense, in that as long as you are fueling yourself to sustain that, your body is going to burn more calories just by existing. So that's the number one thing, super direct effect. It is necessary that you take into account your diet. If you are, resistance training but not eating enough protein, for instance, most likely you're not going to see the effects you're looking for, at least not in the long term. So you have to balance those two things, but that is the direct effect. And then on the other side of things, we're going to talk about hormones. So a big thing that resistance training can actually do, which is super cool, is decrease insulin resistance, or maybe not decrease, but it can help prevent insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is unfortunately a pretty big issue in this day and age. Most commonly, you probably heard of type 2 diabetes. That is a huge part of it, or the contributor to it, not the root cause, but an effect that is a marker of type 2 diabetes. And then PCOS is another one. Oftentimes that's something that's showing up, is that insulin resistance in people who are dealing with PCOS. Even people with hypoglycemia, sometimes when you see huge swings in blood sugar, there is an issue going on there with insulin sensitivity. And obviously understand I'm not a doctor, so don't take that word as law, just kind of as a synthesis of my research, of my findings. And then weight training actually really helps with that. Resistance training can make the body more resilient and more receptive to insulin. So your body is not having to deal with a ton of sugar floating around in your blood, but not actually getting into your cells. And then let's talk about stress, and let's talk about cortisol. So there actually is a link between cortisol and stress and our blood sugar hormones, but we're not going to get into that today. I do want to talk about, though, the effect of cortisol on your minerals and on pretty much everything going on in your body. So first of all, cortisol is super important. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning, and anytime we need to be in a fight or flight state, it's really instrumental to that happening. And the ability to get in that fight or flight state is actually quite important. Now, even when we are working out, especially if it's higher intensity exercise, that cortisol is going to come up. You're going to see that cortisol level rise. But don't freak out, as long as we are, again, making sure we're recovering properly, not overtraining, especially in the context of resistance training. What we're going to see is that cortisol level spiking during your actual training session, but then remaining a little bit lower, or maybe even a good bit lower throughout the rest of your day. And that's really what we're looking for when it comes to this hormone cycle, is that it has, in a sense, the proper expression, the proper context to come out, so that then you can be chilled out. You are then in your parasympathetic state as you're recovering, as you're resting and digesting, as is the case with that parasympathetic state. So that's another great thing about exercise and your hormones. And then, of course, by regulating cortisol levels, what you're doing is helping to protect your mineral stores, because, for instance, when you're really stressed, whether it's a physical stressor or a mental stressor, we tend to burn through our minerals. Magnesium's the first one that comes to mind. We burn through that really quickly, and so we can often find ourselves depleted if we are living in a state of stress. And that's where this all ties back to the concept of making sure you're working out in such a way that is aiding your body and not just becoming an added negative stressor. It's an outlet, it is that expression, but it is not just weighing you down. So now that we've covered all of that, I want to take y'all through the logistics of kind of my weekly workout routine. I've told you I do 3 workouts a day, not a day, oh my goodness, 3 workouts a week, usually weight training, and I like to break that up into a leg day, a lower body day, a push day, think pecs, shoulders, triceps, and then a pull day or a back focus day. And I really focus especially on engaging my lats, on not over engaging through my traps, and also on quad activation. And that's just knowing my own anatomy and some imbalances that I have had, trying to prevent those and make sure that I'm really taking care of myself structurally, so to say, so I'm not perpetuating injuries, so that I can actually get better with some things that I've struggled with, and just to prevent things down the road. So that is my strategy. But what we're gonna do is take a look at a leg day, and I'm gonna show you how I decide on the different exercises I'm going to do. And then if you want more, I can take you through a push and a pull workout in another video. We can go through that whole workout split like I mentioned earlier. So before we go to the gym, I just wanna talk about the main patterns of movement, we'll say, when it comes to the lower body. And this is a great way to decide what exercises you are going to do. So first of all, we have the different muscle groups. In the legs, I have a sticky note here to make sure I remember all of the exercises that I need to talk about. But we have in the legs, we've got the quads, we've got the hamstrings, we've got the calves. I'm wearing a dress, so trying not to stick my leg up too far. And then we've got the glutes, obviously. And in working all those different muscle groups, there are a few different kind of fundamental movement patterns that it can be really helpful to think about. Number one, we have a lunge, then we have a squat, and then we have a hinge. And hinge can often involve your back muscles as well. That's really great, but depending on how you lay it out, you're definitely getting activation, especially through the hamstrings and the glutes. So far as it is possible, and I am mechanically, we'll say, able to do it, I try to include a squat, a lunge, and a hinge in all of my lower body workouts. And then oftentimes I'll do something that is specific to calves, but because I teach bar, even just through demoing, I'm doing a lot of very calf strenuous work, so I don't always incorporate that into my workout as my calves are involved. in a lot of different things. Enough talking, Sally. Let's go ahead and get to the gym. Before we get into the heavy lifting, I always want to make sure that my muscles are nice and warm, that I've got a lot of blood flowing to the area. So there are two things that I'm starting with, just some body weight walking lunges. Lunges are actually a struggle for me due to some knee and hip instability, imbalances. And so I find that doing them body weight high volume works for me, but weighting them is often a real challenge. So just several rounds up and down the length of the room of those body weight walking lunges, keeping them close together to really activate through my quads. And then I want to make sure I'm warming up my medial glutes. So for that, I find a clamshell, those medial glutes often can be neglected, at least by me, and so it's important to activate them before getting into that heavier lifting. Now I really want to focus in on my quads, make sure they are going to be active as I do my different exercises. So I'm starting with a leg extension in terms of my heavy lifting. I do this unilaterally so that I can really make sure I'm getting even, we will say equal engagement from leg to leg. So now my quads are nice and primed, and we are getting honestly into our main lift of the day. And this is where these patterns of movement are coming in. And that main pattern of movement, the first one is going to be a squat. Now, you don't always literally have to do a squat. In my case today, I kind of inverted that, or took it upside down, I guess. We did a leg press. I kept my legs a little bit closer together, focus on the quads, but was definitely still getting some hamstring and glute activation. And I did this pretty heavy and also pretty high volume. Next up, I moved on to that next pattern of movement, and that is going to be my hinge. There are plenty of different ways to do deadlifts. I just encourage, if you have not done deadlifts before, do your research, have a coach, have an instructor check up on your form, because there's a good way to do it, there's a not so good way to do it, and I have suffered the effects of the not so good way to do it, we will say. But I chose a split stance deadlift here, just to really get into my hamstrings and my glutes. I find that this feels wonderful. Again, unilateral movement to help make sure I'm getting equal engagement from one side of my body to the other. And then after that, I finished up with what we call a sissy squat, using just one dumbbell at my chest. Funny name for it, but it's up on your toes. I like to do these barefoot, and then you're just squatting down, coming back up. Be mindful of your knees, but I do try to get to about 90 degrees, not always that deep, on my toes to protect my knees, but really, really burning out those quads. And so that's kind of a fun exercise that I threw on at the end that wasn't entirely necessary, but a good way to just get that little burnout, get a little bit more quad activation. And honestly, that was it. It seems pretty straightforward. I know I went into some depth there, so I hope that's helpful to you and not overwhelming. But the idea behind all of that, again, hitting the main muscle groups, calves were involved, especially with those sissy squats, but really with everything, at least to some extent. And I do these workouts in usually no more than an hour. Like, my husband loves to just be in the gym. He'll be there for 2 hours, and that's great. Good for him. He really enjoys it. I find that I'm getting bored by that point. So usually under an hour. Upper body is often even quicker. And this works really great for me. But if going to the gym, weightlifting specifically, isn't your thing, that's okay. There are plenty of other ways to do resistance training. I would love to know in the comments what your favorite way to do resistance training is. And other than that, I've been talking for ages, so I am going to shut up and get out of here. But thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye y'all.